Hello, guys, and welcome back to my channel. Hope you guys doing well. And so we're back again. Gonna talk about gang stalking, and I got a really interesting topic to discuss. I've actually been wanting to talk to people about this for a while, and so here we go. Um, Obviously, anybody that's been gang stalked, especially if you've been gang stalked like me for 8 years plus. Some of you have been gang stalked for 20 years. Some of you have been gang stalked for. I've heard some stories of people that have been gang stalked for 25, 30 years. Either way, I'm sure that you have probably asked yourself the question of why is this being done? So, excuse me. In my first video, I already talked about who is doing it, as in who is behind the gang stalking, or otherwise known as Zersetzung. And of course, we have looked at all the angles, we've looked at all the logical, rational sort of proof and arguments, and it all seems to point to one direction, which is, of course, the government. That the government is is the only one that would be able to carry out such a complicated program to harass targeted individuals for multiple years on end. Now, of course, since we got that covered, we want to talk about, why is it being done? So we know it's the government, but we still want to know, why is the government targeting innocent people such as ourselves? That's actually a very good question to ask. Why would the government do this? Now, I'm going to try to provide a theory I have as to why I think the government would do this to people. It is the best theory that I have come up with. It could potentially be wrong. I don't have the facts. I don't have any evidence for it, because obviously it's very difficult to know. This is like a secret program, right? Gangstalking is a secret program, but by the government. It's not something that is discussed in the mainstream, and it is extremely, politically incorrect for you to talk about it in public. So it's not exactly easy to gather any information about it and know precisely why it is being done. But the best theory I can come up with is the one that I'm going to tell you right now. So listen up. To put it simply, I think it is basically it's like a control grid. Gang stalking is a program for control. It is an attempt by the government to basically, how to say this, to put its hands on the citizens. It's an attempt by the government to see how much they can control their subjects, their citizens. So I'm going to explain something to you guys. In ancient times, prior to the Industrial Revolution and the modernization and all these things, when people like citizens were granted a lot of freedoms, slavery was abolished, universal suffrage was introduced. In case you guys don't know what universal suffrage is, it is the ability for people to vote in a ballot. So universal suffrage would be the idea that in a democracy, any single person or every person has the right, regardless of their background, regardless of their ethnicity, they have the right to vote, basically, on who governs them, right? Now, so a lot of these freedoms have been given and provided to people in the recent years. And of course, slavery was abolished. And in contrast to, like, let's say ancient times or medieval times or whatever, the freedoms of people were constricted. And of course, governments used to have a much bigger control over their citizens. A lot of it used to be through the medium of religion. Religion was a very, very powerful means of controlling people, sheeple, excuse me. But there were always the government always had a lot of control over the citizens because the rights of the citizens were actually quite limited. And I think the best example we can look at is, for example, ancient Rome. In the ancient Roman society, something like a ridiculous number, like 80% of the population, were literally slaves. Okay, so 80% of the population were literal slaves that were owned by their masters. So unless you were, a soldier or somebody from a much higher status class, like a merchant or a nobleman or a patrician or an oligarch, you basically didn't have a lot of freedom. And so basically that gets me into, well, the topic of this video, which is basically why the government is doing gang stalking against citizens, against people. And the reason is because due to modernization and the freedoms that have been granted to people in the recent decades and centuries, governments have become a little bit, how do I say it, salty, maybe, bitter about the fact that they don't have as much control over their citizens as they used to. Guys, remember, governments are not particularly good people. So ideally they would want to have literally own everyone as slaves. That would be amazing for the government, because that's what a government does. They want to govern you. They want to rule you. They want to tell you what to do. And of course, the best way to own somebody and to control them and tell them what to do is to have them as a slave. Now, anyway, like I am, I'm reiterating the things that I've said, and that, clearly because of the freedoms that have been granted to people, and of course, we can't keep people slaves anymore, and universal suffrage and democracy and blah, 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 blah. Governments have been having less and less control over their population of the citizens. So this is where gangstalking is coming into the equation. Gangstalking is basically an attempt by the government to control the population and to test out a system, or you can call it also a program of control. And basically, if you are experiencing gangstalking, this is basically an attempt by the government to test the gangstalking program on you. You're a test subject, to see how much control can be achieved and how people would generally react to these control tactics and how effective they are. So by studying your reaction to the gang stalking and how much control the government can achieve through those means and those tactics, it is very useful for the government, because they know now just how effective their tactics can be in the future if they want to control the population, and sort of like what kind of level of control can be achieved and how effective these methods are, and so on and so forth. So anyway, basically, to summarize everything, if you are being gangstalked, you are basically just a test subject. You're like a guinea pig. Excuse me, but that's the reality. You're just a test subject of a much larger project. They are testing this on you. They've selected a couple of people, obviously from all over the world, so it adds up into the millions. But they have selected a number of people from the world population to test gang stalking or Zersetzung tactics, to see how effective they are. And of course, the plan would be that in the future, this is at least my opinion, that in the future, the plan would be to roll this out on a much larger scale. So instead of just testing, because when you're testing, you're just using some small numbers of people. But when they actually roll out the real program of subjugation and control, it's going to be much bigger. And of course, it's going to be rolled out into the public, and it's going to be used against a much larger section of the population to subdue, to control the people, and to essentially, basically, bring everything back into like the medieval times. Back when the feudal times when um, people were born in farms that were owned by the local noble or lord who lived in a castle, and you couldn't leave that piece of land because that piece of land was actually owned by the lord, and the lord also owned you as property to him, and he was your liege, and that whole kind of stuff. So that's basically what they're trying to do. And like I said, they're just testing this out on a couple of people. I mean, I say a couple of people, but obviously adds up to millions when you calculate like worldwide population. But eventually, they're going to roll it out and use it on the entire population to control everyone. So another question would be, why would you specifically be selected for this? I cannot really answer this question, but I would say my guess, as a former scientist, we used to do something in research when we would, uh, you would try, like you could do like a research project in a laboratory, for example. As a scientist, you would have to come up with something called a hypothesis, which means you say, for example, I believe that this experiment is going to have such and such results, and then you test the hypothesis to see whether the hypothesis is true or false. When it's false, it's usually called a null hypothesis, and so on and so forth. So, besides all of this, the point is that my hypothesis about all of this is that they select some people based on certain characteristics. I do not know. Excuse me. I do not know what these characteristics are, but I'm pretty sure that they don't just select people randomly. I think they select certain people that would be valuable for them to test this program on. And yeah, so that's what they're doing. So they select certain people based on some kind of characteristics or requirements, and then they test it out on them. Obviously, because it's a government, they can watch all their citizens. They can, it is well known by everyone that the government is literally spying on pretty much everyone. So they can just select whoever they want, and yeah. So I hope that basically in this video I managed to answer some of the questions that you might have. Obviously, I do not claim to have all the answers. However, this is my hypothesis or theory as to what I think gangstalking is all about. Why this is being done, why this is being carried out on people. And, because, I'm a firm believer, excuse me, I'm a firm believer in logic and rationality. I'm a rational person, and I'm also very pragmatic. So I always like to see the logic in things. There has to be a rationale. There has to be a logic to these things that are happening. This gang stalking can't just be randomly happening to people. There has to be a reason. There has to be somebody doing it. There has to be a reason why they're doing it, and it has to be leading towards something. Anyway, before I end this video, I want to tell you a little story that I think you're going to find very interesting, which relates basically to this topic, especially what I talked about in the beginning about, the level of control that governments like to hold on people. So basically, I previously, when I was in England, this was just recently, actually, this was a few years ago. This was, I think, in 2000, and I believe it was in 2019. I ended up in a hospital, and they put me in this room, in this like waiting room, before I would actually be transferred into the hospital. And surprise, surprise, some gang stalkers showed up in the room. Guys, I can't really describe this. This was really creepy, really creepy. Like, this was really weird. There was this old man who was wearing diapers, and he was kind of mocking me. He was like sort of getting up and sitting on a chair and acting like a baby, kind of mocking me and saying that I'm like a baby or something like that. And there were also some people in that room as well that were really, really creepy, and they seemed very angry as well at me, and just doing a lot of really shady kind of behavior. I sensed that these people were not normal, and I knew that they were gang stalkers, that they were involved in this gang stalking. But anyway, I'm gonna get to the important part. So anyway, I get up and I start talking to this old man that I told you about, that was acting like a baby. And as I started a conversation with him, and I don't know, I just said something, I can't remember what it was, but it was like, if you are tired, just take a rest. And he tells me, he replies to me, he says, rest is for the weak. And I look at him and I'm like, all right, fair enough. And so there was a nurse there, and she looks at me and she says, she's pointing at the old man and she's saying, do you know how rich this man is? And I said, no, I have no clue. How rich is he? And she goes like, this man owns 500 houses. So guys, the minimum price of a house in the UK, which is of course very expensive, is like £150,000. So you can do the math, right? You can calculate 150,000 multiplied by 500, and you're gonna get a number in the millions. So obviously he was really rich, and so we started talking, and this guy had a really, really, really sick look in his face. Like, he was just like really, I can't describe it, but something like, something like that. Like a really sick, kind of devilish, demonic look on his face. And, he starts talking to me about some stuff, and he says, people believe that we have done away with slavery, but this, as in this society, is a modern slave camp. That's what he said. And I was like, yeah, that's true, actually. So remember those words. People think that we have done away with slavery, but this society is actually a modern slave camp. So that's basically them, the gang stalkers, saying, that, we own you guys, basically. We own you as slaves. And obviously, this place was like really freakishly scary and odd in every way. There was like Freemason and Illuminati symbols all over the fucking place. Like, I would go to the bathroom, for example, and there was like a symbol of a pyramid, the Illuminati pyramid. But it was so funny. It was like the top of it was, where the eye is supposed to be, was like the head of a shower. And the rest of it was just dots of water. It was cleverly dissimulated. You know what I mean? It's like on a dollar bill, for example, where they have the pyramid with the eyes, and it's just a cleverly dissimulated. Oh, no, nothing weird about that. Just just the Illuminati symbol on the American dollar, right? It just happens to be. There's nothing fishy about it, right? Yeah. So, I go to the toilet and I see the symbol, and I'm like, whoa, that looks exactly like the Illuminati pyramid, except it looks like a shower head with, like water droplets forming the base of the pyramid. But anyway, and there was pyramids everywhere. There's symbols of pyramids everywhere. They love pyramids. That's also the reason why the government is always um, sharing this like food pyramid, the food pyramid, for example. So there's always like a pyramid of some fucking thing. Anyway, so yeah, that was fun times. That was also a scary time that I went through that. And I also have another story for you guys. This is a little bit unrelated, but since I mentioned the Illuminati and the Freemasons, I don't know if you guys believe in them. Personally, I do. I do believe that they exist. I definitely think there is Freemasons and Illuminati, the NWO, and they definitely own this society, and they're very powerful people. But I was actually I knew somebody that was somebody that of an acquaintance that I've known for a very long time, and one day he approached me and he said, he flat out told me like, I'm in the Freemasons, and he was like, "Do you want to join?" And guys, I was surprised. I was really shocked because this was not bullshit. This was the real fucking deal. You know, he was like, we're in the Freemasons, and if you want to join, you can join, right? And I obviously knowing what these people stand for and the horrible things they're doing in the world. Although I did not reject, I didn't say no, but I just didn't give an answer. I was like, nah, no way I am joining these people. Especially if they're the ones behind all this gang stalking. Like, I don't want to be associated with such, excuse my language, scum. So yeah. Anyway, guys, that's my video telling you guys my personal theory as to why I think the government is doing this to people. This is the best explanation I can give, because I can't really think of any other reason, why this is being done. So basically, pretty much to answer the question, it's experimentation. Experimentation leading to the fulfillment of a much larger project, which is going to be rolled out in the future. This could be like in 50, 60, 70 years in the future. Anyway, guys, hope you guys stay safe. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys in the next one.